Keep both hands where I can see them. The command shattered the quiet evening before Marcus Ellison had fully rolled down his window. Blue and red lights washed across the hood of his dark gray pickup as traffic drifted past on the Georgia highway. Marcus slowly exhaled. He had spent 23 years in the United States Army. He had endured combat zones, rocket attacks, long nights overseas. Yet nothing tightened his chest quite like flashing police lights in his own hometown. He placed both hands on top of the steering wheel. Fingers spread. Perfectly visible. The patrol car door swung open. Officer Derek Harlan stepped out with quick, aggressive strides. One hand rested on his holstered pistol. The other gripped a flashlight despite the fading daylight. Marcus watched him through the driver's side mirror. No sudden movements. No reaching. No surprises. Exactly as military training had taught him. The officer stopped beside the window. License. Registration. Marcus spoke calmly. Yes, officer. My wallet is in my right pocket. My registration is inside the center console. Derek didn't respond. Instead, he studied Marcus for several long seconds. His eyes drifted across the truck. An older pickup. Clean. No bumper stickers. No visible clutter. Nothing unusual. Then his attention returned to Marcus. Where are you coming from? A memorial service. What memorial? A military ceremony. Derek tilted his head slightly. You military? Yes. What rank? Marcus hesitated for only a moment. Major. The answer earned a short laugh. Sure. Marcus didn't react. I can show you my military identification. I didn't ask for that. Traffic rushed by only a few feet away. The wind carried the scent of warm asphalt and freshly cut grass from the highway shoulder. Several cars slowed as drivers noticed the flashing lights. Most kept moving. Marcus remained exactly as he was. Hands on the wheel. Back against the seat. Eyes forward. Officer Harlan leaned closer. You know why I stopped you? No, sir. You changed lanes without signaling. Marcus thought back carefully. He remembered using his turn signal. Twice. But arguing beside a highway never changed. Anything. I'm sorry if I made a mistake. The apology seemed to irritate Derek. So now you're admitting it. I'm saying I may have misunderstood the situation. No. Derek's voice hardened. You people always have an excuse. For the first time, Marcus looked directly into the officer's eyes. He recognized the tone immediately. It wasn't about a traffic violation anymore. It had become something else. Something far more personal. Marcus chose his next words carefully. I'd like to cooperate. Good. Then keep cooperating. Derek stepped backward. Open your door. Marcus nodded once. My seatbelt is still fastened. I'm going to unbuckle it. Then I'll open the door. Do it slowly. Yes, officer. Marcus reached deliberately toward the buckle. Every movement was measured. Every motion announced before it happened. The metal latch clicked softly. He paused. My right hand is moving toward the door handle. Instead of answering, Derek suddenly shouted. No. Marcus froze instantly. His hand stopped halfway. Confusion crossed his face. I thought you wanted me to exit the vehicle. I said don't move. I already stopped. For 2 long seconds, neither man moved. The silence felt unnaturally heavy. Then Derek noticed something tucked above the driver's seat. A leather credential holder clipped behind the sun visor. What is that? My identification. You reaching for it? No. You looked at it. You asked what it was. The officer's breathing became noticeably faster. His grip tightened around his sidearm. Marcus noticed immediately. Years of military service had taught him to recognize stress before words revealed it. He lowered his voice even further. My hands are back on the steering wheel. I am not reaching for anything. You can retrieve my identification yourself if you'd prefer. Another vehicle slowed as it passed. This time the driver stared long enough to sense the growing tension. Marcus remained completely still. The memorial program from earlier that afternoon rested quietly on the passenger seat. A neatly folded American flag lay inside a protective case behind him. His pressed army dress uniform hung carefully in the rear of the cab. None of it mattered. Officer Harlan saw none of those things. He saw only the man behind the wheel. Take your left hand off the steering wheel. Marcus complied. Now put it outside the window. Marcus slowly extended his left arm. Right hand stays on the wheel. It is. No sudden movements. I understand. Everything appeared under control. Until Derek spoke again. Now get your wallet. Marcus blinked. My wallet is in my right pocket. You just told me not to move my right hand. I said get your wallet. Marcus hesitated. Only because the commands contradicted each other. He chose the safest response he could think of. Officer. I need you to tell me exactly what you want me to do. Derek took one step closer. His voice rose. I already did. Marcus kept his breathing steady. My right hand is still visible. I'm going to reach only if you instruct me. For one brief instant, the world seemed to hold its breath. Passing traffic faded into the background. The wind stopped mattering. Even the flashing patrol lights felt strangely distant. Marcus slowly turned his head. Officer. My wallet is in my, his sentence never reached the final word. A deafening gunshot exploded across the highway. Birds burst from nearby trees. Drivers slammed on their brakes. Marcus's body jerked violently against the driver's seat. A dark stain spread across his left shoulder. He gasped once. His breathing became shallow. Officer Harlan stumbled backward. The pistol remained raised. Smoke drifted silently from the barrel. Marcus pressed his uninjured hand against the wound. His face tightened with pain. Yet his voice remained remarkably calm. My military identification. He struggled for another breath. Is still behind the visor. Then his head leaned back against the seat. And for the first time since the traffic stop began, the body camera captured something Officer Derek Harlan had never expected. Complete silence. For nearly 3 seconds, no one moved. The echo of the gunshot drifted across the highway before disappearing into the evening air. Officer Derek Harlan remained frozen beside the driver's door. His pistol was still pointed toward the truck. His breathing had become ragged. Inside the cab, Marcus Ellison leaned heavily against the seat. Blood soaked through the left shoulder of his dark jacket, spreading slowly across the fabric. He closed his eyes for only a moment. Then forced them open again. Years of military training had taught him one lesson above all others. Stay conscious. Stay calm. Stay alive. He pressed his right hand firmly against the wound. His breathing became slower. Measured. Deliberate. I've been shot. His voice was barely above a whisper. I need medical assistance. Derek finally reached for his shoulder radio. His finger trembled as he pressed the transmit button. Dispatch. A pause. Then another. I've fired my weapon. Static answered first. Then the dispatcher spoke. Unit 21, status. Derek swallowed. The suspect reached toward his waistband. Marcus immediately turned his head. No. His voice remained weak but unmistakably clear. I followed every instruction. Derek ignored him. I discharged 1 round. Send EMS. The dispatcher answered instantly. Medical units are responding. Within seconds, sirens began echoing somewhere in the distance. Traffic behind the patrol car slowed to a crawl. Several drivers stopped completely. A man wearing a construction vest hurried toward the shoulder before another officer arriving from the opposite direction ordered him back. Stay behind your vehicle. The man stopped. I know first aid. We've got it handled. No one had. Marcus remained alone inside the truck. Still pressing against the wound himself. Officer Lisa Moreno arrived less than 2 minutes later. She stepped out of her patrol SUV, expecting to assist with a routine felony stop. Instead, she saw Marcus sitting motionless behind the steering wheel. Unarmed. Bleeding. His left arm hung uselessly against his side. Her eyes shifted toward Derek. What happened? He reached. Marcus answered before Derek could continue. I did not. Lisa looked through the driver's window. The steering wheel. The dashboard. The seats. No handgun. No knife. Nothing. She opened the passenger door carefully. Sir. My name is Officer Moreno. I'm going to help. You. Marcus nodded weakly. My shoulder. I know. She immediately applied pressure using a trauma dressing from her medical kit. Her training took over. No panic. Only procedure. As she worked, her eyes drifted across the truck's interior. A folded army dress uniform rested neatly inside a garment bag. Several military ribbons were pinned above the breast pocket. A framed photograph leaned against the rear seat. Marcus stood smiling beside a group of soldiers overseas. Another photo showed him shaking hands with a senior army general. Lisa frowned. She reached toward the passenger seat. A memorial service program lay partially folded. Across the front, the words read, honoring those who never came home. She looked back at Marcus. You attended this today? He nodded once. Yes. For a friend. Lisa's expression softened. Then she noticed something tucked beneath the driver's sun visor. A dark leather credential holder. Exactly where Marcus had said it would be. She glanced toward Derek. Is this what he was reaching for? He never got that far. Lisa carefully lowered the visor. The credential holder slipped into her hand. She opened it. Her eyes widened immediately. United States Army. Department of Defense. Active duty. Major Marcus Ellison. Her breathing stopped for an instant. She looked back at Marcus. Then toward Derek. You said he reached for a weapon. He made a threatening movement. Lisa looked around the truck once more. I don't see a weapon. Derek's voice grew sharper. Keep looking. She did. Under the seats. Inside the center console. Behind the driver's seat. Nothing. No firearm. No ammunition. No holster. Nothing remotely resembling a weapon. The silence grew heavier. Paramedics finally arrived. They moved quickly. Cutting away Marcus's jacket. Checking his pulse. Starting in 4. One medic examined the entry wound. The round passed through. Another nodded. He's lucky. Marcus managed a faint smile. I've been luckier. The stretcher rolled toward the ambulance. Before the doors closed. Marcus reached carefully toward Lisa. My phone. She picked it up from the cup holder. The emergency contact. His breathing became strained. First number. Lisa nodded. I'll make the call. The ambulance pulled away with lights flashing into the fading evening. No one spoke for several moments. Then Lisa turned slowly toward Derek. You said he reached for his waistband. He did. She held up the military credential. He told you his identification was behind the visor. Derek folded his arms. He could have been distracting me. Lisa didn't answer. Instead, she walked back toward the truck. Everything remained exactly where Marcus had described. Wallet. Still inside his right pocket. Seat belt. Still hanging beside the driver's seat. No weapon. No sudden movement frozen inside the scene. Only evidence. One piece after another. A highway traffic camera overlooked the entire stretch of road. Its lens had remained fixed on the shoulder since before the stop began. A nearby convenience store security camera pointed toward the intersection. It had captured part of the encounter. 3 passing drivers had activated their dash cameras after seeing the flashing patrol lights. And Officer Derek Harlan's body camera had recorded every command. Every pause. Every contradiction. Every second before the trigger was pulled. As investigators began placing evidence markers around the truck, Lisa quietly closed Marcus's credential holder. She looked once more toward the ambulance disappearing over the hill. Then back at Derek. For the first time since arriving, she saw uncertainty replacing confidence. She spoke only one sentence. Not loudly. Not angrily. Just quietly enough to make it impossible to forget. If the cameras heard what I heard. This isn't going to end the way you think. The operating room doors closed at 6:42 p.m. The red emergency light above the entrance remained on. Doctors moved quickly. Nurses exchanged short, precise instructions. Inside, Major Marcus Ellison fought to stay alive. The bullet had entered through his left shoulder. It narrowly missed an artery. Another inch, and the outcome would have been very different. Outside the trauma unit, Officer Lisa Moreno stood quietly against the wall. Marcus's military identification remained in her hands. She had already called. The emergency contact listed on the back. The response came less than 30 seconds later. This is Colonel David Reynolds. Lisa introduced herself. There was a brief silence. Then she explained what had happened. She never reached the end of the sentence. You said who? Major Marcus Ellison, sir. Another pause. Then the colonel spoke again. I'm leaving now. His voice had changed. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Back at the sheriff's department. Officer Derek Harlan sat alone inside an interview room. His service weapon had already been collected. Standard procedure after any officer-involved shooting. He rubbed his forehead repeatedly. The body camera sat inside an evidence bag on the table. A detective entered carrying a yellow legal pad. My name is Lieutenant Sarah Collins. I'm conducting the initial interview. Derek nodded. I understand. Sarah switched on the recorder. State your name. Officer Derek Harlan. Tell me what happened. Derek leaned forward. The driver ignored my commands. He reached toward his waistband. I believed he was drawing a weapon. Sarah wrote several notes. You fired 1 round. Yes. Did you see a weapon? Derek hesitated. I believed one was present. Sarah looked up. That's not what I asked. Silence. No. I didn't actually see one. She made another note. What caused you to believe he was armed? He kept moving. Sarah glanced toward the evidence bag. We'll compare that with the body camera. She closed the notebook. For now. Please remain available. The interview ended after less than 15 minutes. Across town, Colonel David Reynolds arrived at the hospital wearing his Army service uniform. 2 soldiers followed behind him. Neither spoke. Lisa stepped forward. "I'm Officer Moreno." The colonel shook her hand. "Thank you for calling. The surgeons say he'll survive." Relief crossed the colonel's face. "Only briefly." "What happened?" Lisa answered honestly. "I wasn't here when the shot was fired." She paused. "But I examined the vehicle. There was no weapon." The colonel nodded slowly. "I didn't expect there to be." He looked through the operating room window. "Marcus has completed 4 overseas deployments. He earned the Bronze Star. He trained young soldiers to stay calm under pressure." A faint smile appeared. "If he told the officer where his identification was." "That's exactly where it would have been." Lisa looked down at the credential in her hands. "That's where I found it." The operating room doors finally opened. A surgeon stepped into the hallway. The surgery was successful. Everyone released the breath they had been holding. "Major Ellison will recover." The colonel closed his eyes briefly. "Thank you, Doctor." Meanwhile, inside the sheriff's digital evidence unit, technicians had already begun downloading every available recording. Body camera. Dash camera. Radio traffic. Vehicle GPS dispatch logs. Everything. Senior investigator Michael Grant watched the first playback without speaking. Officer Harlan approached the driver's window. Professional enough. Then came the commands. "Keep your hands where I can see them." A few seconds later. "Get out of the vehicle." Another pause. Then. "Keep your right hand on the wheel." Seconds after that. "Get your wallet." The investigator stopped the video. He replayed the sequence. Again. Then once more. The room remained silent. Finally, one technician spoke. "Those commands conflict." Grant nodded. "Continue." The footage rolled forward. Marcus announced every movement. Every single one. "My wallet is in my right pocket. My registration is in the console. I'm removing my seatbelt. My hand is moving toward the door." Everything was verbalized before it happened. The investigator paused again. "Notice something?" Another analyst answered quietly. "He never surprises the officer." Grant nodded. "He gives advance notice every time." The video continued. Marcus asked one final question. "Officer. I need you to tell me exactly what you want me to do." Grant froze the frame. Marcus's right hand remained resting near the steering wheel. Not reaching. Not hidden. Visible. Another analyst enlarged the image. There. Everyone leaned closer. The leather credential holder remained clipped behind the visor. Untouched. Grant looked toward the room. The officer said. The suspect reached for his waistband. Nobody answered. Because the video showed something different. Grant pressed play. The gunshot echoed through the speakers. Marcus recoiled. Then came the words that changed the atmosphere inside the evidence room. "My military identification is still behind the visor." Grant slowly removed his glasses. He rubbed his eyes. Not because the evidence was confusing. Because it wasn't. Everything fit together. Every frame. Every command. Every second. 1 hour later. Sheriff Angela Brooks entered the evidence room herself. She rarely reviewed footage personally. Tonight was different. Grant stood. "You need to see this." She watched the recording from beginning to end. Without interruption. When the screen went dark, she remained seated. For several long moments. Finally she spoke. "Relieve Officer Harlan of all law enforcement authority." Grant nodded. "Effective immediately." She looked back at the frozen image of Marcus sitting calmly behind the wheel. "Immediately." She stood. "And notify the district attorney." Grant hesitated. "Anything else?" The sheriff answered without looking away from the screen. "Yes. Contact the army. They deserve to hear the truth from us. Before they hear it from anyone else." Outside the hospital, the American flag above the entrance moved gently in the evening breeze. Inside a recovery room, Major Marcus Ellison slowly regained consciousness. He looked toward the chair beside his bed. Colonel Reynolds stood waiting. Marcus managed a weak smile. "I guess I won't be making it home for dinner." The colonel smiled back. "No. But you're going home." He paused. "And the man who shot you won't be wearing a badge when you do." The next morning, Officer Derek Harlan walked into the sheriff's department expecting another interview. He had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the gunshot again. He convinced himself it had been a terrible mistake. An unfortunate decision made in a dangerous moment. He still believed someone would understand. Someone always did. As he entered the operations hallway, conversation stopped. Deputies who usually greeted him simply looked away. Others quietly returned to their paperwork. The silence followed him all the way to the briefing room. Captain Rachel Morgan was already waiting. So was Sheriff Angela Brooks. Neither offered a seat. "Derek," the sheriff began. "We've completed our preliminary review." He nodded. "I've already explained everything." "I know." She slid a thin folder across the table. "We reviewed your statement." Another folder followed. "Then we reviewed the evidence." Derek glanced down. Body camera transcript. Dash camera timeline. Dispatch audio log. Civilian witness statements. Highway camera analysis. Each document carried the same date. The same traffic stop. The same name. Major Marcus Ellison. Sheriff Brooks folded her hands. "I want to give you one opportunity." Derek looked up hopefully. "If there's anything you wish to correct, this is the time." He hesitated. "Only briefly. I believed my life was in danger." The sheriff nodded. "Let's examine that." She pressed a button on the remote. The large monitor came to life. Marcus appeared behind the steering wheel. Calm. Hands visible. The room remained silent while the recording played. Every instruction. Every response. Every pause. Every contradiction. No one interrupted. When the video reached the final seconds before the shot, Sheriff Brooks paused it. The image froze. Marcus's right hand rested exactly where he had said it would remain. Visible. Empty. The sheriff looked toward Derek. "Where is the weapon?" He stared at the screen. "I thought," she interrupted quietly. "I'm not asking what you thought. I'm asking what existed." Silence. "There wasn't one." She nodded once. The video continued. Marcus announced every movement before making it. The body camera captured each word clearly. "My wallet is in my right pocket. My military identification is behind the visor. I'm removing my seat belt. I need you to tell me exactly what you want me to do." The gunshot echoed through the conference room speakers. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The sheriff allowed several seconds of silence before stopping the recording again. She looked directly at Derek. He complied. Another pause. He communicated. Another. He waited. Then she leaned slightly forward. And you fired anyway. Derek lowered his eyes. Captain Morgan finally spoke. Do you know what the investigators noticed first? He didn't answer. It wasn't the shooting. She pointed toward the transcript. It was the commands. She read them aloud. Keep your right hand on the wheel. A page turned. Get your wallet. Another page. Don't move. She closed the folder. You gave him 3 different commands within seconds. Derek remained motionless. Captain Morgan's voice stayed calm. You created confusion. Then interpreted that confusion as a threat. The word settled heavily across the room. Sheriff Brooks reached for one final document. This is the forensic report. She slid it toward him. The bullet entered through Major Ellison's left shoulder. She paused. The same shoulder that remained outside the driver's window. Exactly where you ordered him to place his arm. Derek's face lost its color. He hadn't realized that. Not until now. Sheriff Brooks stood. For 24 years. I've worn this badge. She looked toward the American flag hanging behind the conference table. I've defended deputies when they acted lawfully. She turned back. I've defended deputies who made honest mistakes. Another pause. But I have never defended dishonesty. She picked up Derek's badge from the table. The polished metal reflected the morning sunlight. For a brief moment, it looked exactly as it had every day he wore it. Then she placed it inside a plain evidence envelope. Officer Derek Harlan. Effective immediately. You are relieved of all law enforcement authority. The room remained silent. Captain Morgan stepped forward. Your department-issued firearm has already been secured. Your commission card has been revoked. Your access credentials have been disabled. She stopped. You are no longer authorized to represent this department. No shouting. No dramatic argument. Only simple words. Delivered without anger. Because facts required no emotion. Derek slowly removed the shoulder patch from his uniform shirt. He looked at it for several seconds. The badge. The patch. The nameplate. Everything he believed defined him. Gone within minutes. As he reached the door, Sheriff Brooks spoke one final time. He stopped. Without turning around. I want you to remember something. Her voice remained steady. You were not dismissed because Major Ellison is an Army major. A long pause filled the room. You were dismissed because the evidence proved he acted with discipline. While you abandoned yours. Derek closed his eyes. For the first time since the traffic stop, he stopped trying to defend himself. Outside the station, reporters had already gathered. Television cameras pointed toward the entrance. Nobody knew the full story yet. But inside the building, everyone already did. At that same moment, Major Marcus Ellison sat upright in his hospital bed for the first time. His shoulder remained heavily bandaged. The pain was real. So was the recovery ahead. Colonel Reynolds entered carrying a small tablet. He handed it to Marcus. On the screen appeared a single statement from the sheriff's office. Officer Derek Harlan has been relieved of duty pending criminal and federal review. Marcus read it quietly. Then locked the screen. The colonel watched him. That's all. Marcus nodded. I wasn't waiting for revenge. He looked out the hospital window. I was waiting for accountability. The colonel smiled. And today? You got it. Marcus slowly shook his head. No. He looked toward the flag flying outside the hospital. Today. The truth did. 3 months later. The scar across Major Marcus Ellison's left shoulder had begun to fade. His strength had returned. The pain had not disappeared completely. Some mornings, lifting his left arm reminded him of that evening on the highway. But every rehabilitation session brought him one step closer to normal life. One autumn morning, Marcus drove the same pickup truck back onto the same stretch of highway. Not because he had to. Because he refused to let one moment of hatred determine where he could go. The truck still carried the same folded American flag behind the rear seat. His army dress uniform still hung neatly inside the garment bag. Only one thing was different. There was now a small hole in the driver's door. The department had offered to replace it. Marcus declined. It reminds me that surviving is not the same as forgetting. Across town, the district attorney announced criminal charges against Derek Harlan. The investigation had reached its conclusion. The findings were unanimous. Every video matched. Every witness agreed. Every forensic report supported the same timeline. Marcus had obeyed every lawful instruction. He had announced every movement before making it. He had never reached for a weapon. Because there had never been one. The charges were not based on public outrage. They were based on evidence. Body camera recordings. Dash camera footage. Radio transmissions. Highway surveillance. Civilian videos. Medical reports. Every piece fit together without contradiction. The truth had never changed. Only the excuses had. Derek appeared before the court wearing a plain suit instead of a deputy's uniform. There was no badge on his chest. No firearm at his side. No authority left to stand behind. When the judge asked whether he understood the charges, Derek answered quietly. "Yes, Your Honor." For the first time, his voice carried no anger. Only regret. The courtroom remained silent. No one celebrated. No one applauded. Because justice was never meant to look like revenge. It was meant to look like responsibility. Several weeks later, Marcus accepted an invitation from the State Police Academy. The auditorium was filled with recruits preparing to wear a badge for the first time. Some had dreamed about becoming officers since childhood. Others had served in the military before choosing law enforcement. Every face carried the same anticipation. Marcus stepped onto the stage wearing his Army service uniform. As soon as the academy commander introduced him, every recruit stood. Not because of his rank. Because of what he had endured. Marcus waited until everyone was seated again. He looked across the room. "I've spent most of my adult life wearing a uniform." He rested one hand lightly against the podium. "The Army taught me something during my first week of training." He smiled faintly. "When you're carrying a weapon, your greatest responsibility is knowing when not to use it." The room became perfectly still. Marcus continued. "People often believe courage means acting quickly." He slowly shook his head. "Sometimes courage means slowing down long enough to understand what you're seeing." He paused. "On the night I was shot, I wasn't afraid because an officer had a gun. I was afraid because he stopped listening. No one moved. No one whispered. Every recruit simply listened." Marcus looked toward the last row. "If someone tells you where their wallet is, believe them until the evidence says otherwise. If someone explains their movements, give them time to comply. If you're uncertain, ask another question. Another pause. Confusion is not a threat." Those 4 words settled over the room. Several instructors quietly wrote them into their notebooks. After the presentation ended, a young recruit waited until everyone else had left. He approached Marcus carefully. "Sir." Marcus smiled. "Go ahead. My father was a police officer. So was my grandfather." He hesitated. "I've always believed wearing the badge would make me a good man." Marcus looked at the young recruit for a long moment. Then he answered. "The badge won't. It only tells people who hired you. The recruit nodded. Marcus placed one hand gently on the young man's shoulder. Your choices. We'll tell them who you are. The young recruit smiled. I won't forget that. I hope you never do. Late that afternoon, Marcus left the academy and drove to Arlington National Cemetery. The rows of white headstones stretched quietly across the hillside. He walked slowly until he reached the grave of Sergeant Daniel Ross, the friend whose memorial service he had attended on the day of the shooting. Marcus placed a small American flag beside the headstone, then stood silently. The autumn wind moved through the trees. For several minutes, he said nothing. Finally, he spoke just above a whisper. I made it home. A single tear rolled down his face. Not because he hated the man who shot him, but because someone else never had the chance to come home at all. As the sun began to set, Marcus turned and walked back toward his truck. His phone vibrated. A news alert appeared on the screen. New statewide de-escalation training adopted following independent review. Mandatory communication training. Mandatory tactical pause before deadly force whenever possible. Scenario-based instruction on conflicting commands. Automatic body camera recording with secure cloud backup. Every recruit in the state would now learn from the mistakes that nearly cost one innocent soldier his life. Marcus looked at the headline for a moment, then quietly locked his phone. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. Because no policy could erase what had happened. But perhaps, it could prevent the next family from receiving the same phone call. The evening sky turned shades of orange and deep blue. Marcus climbed into his truck, started the engine, and drove away. The same man. The same road. A different future. Officer Derek Harlan believed a badge gave him the right to judge a stranger before knowing him. Major Marcus Ellison proved that discipline is stronger than fear, and character lasts longer than authority. One man carried a gun. The other carried honor. Only one of them kept it. Because in the end, power is measured by the force you can use. But integrity is measured by the force you choose to hold back. And that choice will always define the uniform more than the uniform defines the person.